March 10th, 2026, Planning Board meeting. Call the roll call, but beforehand, just want to remind everyone, here, cell phones be turned off and silent, and the meeting is being recorded. I'm sorry, Casey.
Amanda Harvey,
Present.
Claudia Bolgan,
Here.
Dave Edmonds,
Here.
Jim Callahan,
Here.
Bob Doherty,
Here.
Rob Klein,
Here.
Talia Moked.
Here.
First up, Mr. Director.
Yes.
Addition.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure we do a nice warm welcome for our newest planning board member, Amanda Harvey. Amanda, you're replacing Kevin Donovan, who was here for many years. Okay.
No one can replace that.
No, no. We miss him already.
First up, under subdivision approval not required, 2 Hill Street.
Said something last year.
Proposed A&R lots located in Winchester and Woburn. Said lots are associated with the Vale project site of Hill Street in Woburn. You have anything to add for this, John?
I just want to make sure, I was distracted for a moment. This is about Highview?
It is about Hill Street, the Vale project.
Nope.
Uh, We get these meeting minutes. My bad. Definitive subdivision status review. Hillview Road status update on a revised definitive subdivision plans.
Please don't confuse me. I'm a little confused enough. But yes, the update on Highview roadway, I did talk to Michael Santullo, the developer for this project, this afternoon. And the engineer for this project informed Michael that he still needs perhaps a month to finish up with the design for the sewer, water, and storm drainage. The hardest thing about dealing with this project, it's all ledge, and it's a steeply graded ledge, as everybody's familiar with. So it is taking a long time for the engineer to properly design this, so it needs another month. That's the biggest update I have for the project, or the most accurate update.
The road subdivision update?
Winter Road, I don't know if board members have had a chance to go up there and look at the progress of this subdivision. It's a 3-lot subdivision. One of the lots was off of Pearl Street. But one of the houses is near completion, or completed. That's the first one on the right. There's one under construction at the end of the cul-de-sac and one yet to be started. The long delay for this project has actually been getting Eversource to design the power lines to go into the subdivision. So that's been going on for months, and that's where they're at. They came to the developer who was in front of the city council last month. I don't know if anybody caught that. It was actually Eversource, and they were going over the plans that they've come up with to supply power to this subdivision. But it's taken that long over the last year and a half for the plans to be developed for this 3-lot subdivision. But that's been the long delay with it. And that's the update for that.
Board members have any questions on either one of the developments?
I wish I had a year and a half to get my projects done.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully now that that's out of the way, they should be able to finish the subdivision this year.
Through the chair, to John, I'm assuming that both of these subdivisions are still well within the statutory extensions of all subdivision approvals, so that we really don't need to pay very careful attention to when the expiration of either of these are. Is that right?
That's correct. All of the subdivisions and site plans that were under construction during that COVID period, they were granted just last year an extension to complete their projects for until 2027. So next year we'll have a bunch of completed projects, hopefully, and not a bunch of projects requesting further extensions. I'm not going to hold my breath about that, and there may be a further extension that's granted at the state level, but, really, who knows at this point?
Next up is the planning board director update, presentation on the Boston Street Opportunity Analysis Study. Looks like
I'm going to set up the computer. John, do you want to give any brief intro before I...
Yes, I chose Casey to
It's a long one.
lead the presentation this evening on this study that's been going on for almost a year now. And we've had a number of public presentations, most recently before the city council. That was just last week we had a presentation. So what we wanted to do was carry over the information that was presented to the city council last week on this study to the planning board. And this particular study will probably be completed within a month and a half. And then the real work will begin to decipher what the city really wants to do within the industrial park, especially based on the information that's been provided by this study and the number of ideas that are involved with it right now. But again, these are only ideas. There's no obligation involved with this study on the city's behalf. It's just what we want to do is try to figure out how we can better enhance the economic opportunities within the industrial park going forward. What I'd like to say before Casey begins her presentation, this may be a really good opportunity for the planning board to roll up our sleeves and delve into the findings of this study and really have the opportunity to actually plan. As I said to the council last week, a lot of planning board members come on planning boards, and after a year or so, they're always thinking that we're just permit granting authorities. We review plan applications and we take action on applications. But when do we do any planning? Well, we do have the opportunity with the completion of this study to actually, for this planning board, to roll up our sleeves and start looking at the findings and the information that's been provided in this study, and probably look at the possibility of any type of zoning amendments that we could work on. And eventually, once we get through with figuring out, a game plan for this area of the city, this, again, it's an important economic development area of the city and always has been for the last 40 or 50 years. But, we could really help the city as a planning board plan a better future, a more enhanced future for the economic development potential of this area. And then once we do that work, this is just something I'm envisioning. We may want to create an ad hoc committee of the planning board, do some work on it, and then deliver our findings sometime in the future to the city council, or even work with the city council going forward with, trying to better plan for this particular area.
Sounds good. We'll be briefer than we were at City Council last week, so we don't have to wake Dave up. He was here for the whole meeting. But like John said, this has been ongoing for, we applied for the grant 2 years ago, and the study has been going on for a year. So this has really been eating up a lot of our time. So we're excited to be at this stage where we have something to bite our teeth into. So just briefly, in 2017, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council did kind of a preliminary dive into this area and recognized it as a place for potential for new growth. Like, this was the space identified in the city that really had the capacity and the location to attract future economic development. So when I came on board, we did a much deeper dive. We applied for a grant through Mass Development to hire a project team to do this strategic analysis into New Boston Street. We asked the consulting team to look at current market conditions, our existing zoning, and our infrastructure to identify where our weaknesses are in our zoning and our infrastructure and what types of markets we should be attracting for this area. And like John alluded to, this is kind of like a different way for us to be thinking about zoning changes and planning. Like, we're so used to reacting to private property owners asking for, overlay, zoning change, special permit, where this is like the city's chance to be really, really proactive and figure out, like, what is our vision for this area? What do we as residents and planners want to see in that area? And then, like, let's make our zoning match up with that. So that way we're reacting, or, we're being proactive rather than reacting to individual property owners. So, you're all familiar with the area, so I don't have to go into too much detail, but the study area is about 250 acres, 115 parcels with 371 unique businesses, and 84 different property owners. That's a big challenge when we're looking at,
Casey, Can I just
Yeah.
ask a question? Do any board members want particular aspects of this map pointed out? Or are everybody familiar with it? No, okay.
We're good.
Never mind.
So 84 different property owners, and this is, our main economic hub. We have 5,000 employees that travel to the New Boston Street area every day for work. And this area is also responsible for over $341 million of the city's assessed value. So it's really an important place for the city. And that's why we chose to, really do a deep dive into this study. It's an industrial park. Most of the uses out there are industrial. You have a few commercial uses, a few retail uses mixed in, a few commercial, but the majority of the land is there to support, industrial and manufacturing. And like we said earlier, a really diverse mix of businesses, but a lot of them, a lot of different business sectors, but really focused on that industrial use. It is kind of amazing. Our consultants did, a door-to-door survey, and they just were amazed, like, the mix of businesses that are out there. And they kind of have formed their own ecosystem. Someone's doing the machinery. If a part breaks, they can walk across the street to the, person that has the part. So it really has its own little ecosystem up here. And it's functioning really well. Vacancy rates are relatively low in this area for industrial uses. We have a existing conditions report if you really want to do a deep dive into all of those stats. But the area is functioning really well, but we just want to be prepared for what is the next thing, like what's coming next. So that was the point of this. So, our key findings from the market and target industries were, professional, scientific, and technical services are our top performing industries here. And so we should definitely be, working towards connecting more with those. The industrial flex market is at a funny point right now where there's an oversupply of really, really large buildings in the area. There's an oversupply of like the 300,000 square foot warehouse, but there's an undersupply of like the 100,000 square foot warehouse or, industrial space. So that's the type of building that this area could really support based on our lot sizes and that sort of thing. Like everywhere else, office vacancies are rising. Multifamily's hot, there's nothing shocking here. So those are what they think we should be targeting. In terms of the existing zoning, most is zoned industrial with commercial uses. There's a range of uses that are permitted by right and also by special permit. In terms of zoning, half of the lots conform dimensionally, but 77% of the lots don't meet the open space requirement. So that was kind of flagged right away as something that we should consider looking at since there's such a high degree of nonconformity there. Parking requirements are on par, but there's some room we could do there to become, a little bit more competitive. We did a series of public outreach sessions. We did an existing conditions survey here presentation here in the City Council chamber back in September. We did a public outreach session at Joseph's Catering at lunchtime where we surveyed employees as they were coming in to pick up their lunch to find out what the strengths and weaknesses of the area were. We had a survey online and did a door-to-door, survey out there as well. So we got a lot of feedback. Like I said, the existing supply chains in the area are fantastic. A lot of people commented on affordability in terms of people being able to live in close proximity to their work. It came up time and again that Anderson is just too close, but yet so far, like that really it's not really feasible for people to travel by the commuter rail just with the walk that it would take. Relaxing some zoning and permitting would make it easier to accommodate building. A lot of people did like the idea of adding some housing in key areas to kind of create that symbiosis, live, work, play environment. And then,
Casey, can we slow down 1 minute?
Yeah.
I just want to point out a couple of important aspects of what she's saying in regard to Anderson. And I just want to highlight what's going on today in that particular area. So I think everybody knows that the bridge, the New Boston Street Bridge, that's planned for the grand opening late spring, early summer of this year. So that's, 50-plus years in the making that will finally become a reality. I think, the city will probably plan a nice grand opening, pedestrian crossing of the bridge, because it is a big to-do. There aren't, how many days of the week do you have a bridge opening? It takes years for something like this to happen. And then, right now, and Casey can elaborate on this, we just got a bunch of proposals in from an RFP having to do with the pedestrian bridge crossing over the live tracks to enter upon New Boston Street. So the westerly side of the tracks will eventually, through this proposal, going forward, we'll have pedestrian access on the west side of the tracks that will lead over to the 3 active rail lines into the RTC. So that's a real important feature. It's an economic development feature that's really going to help out with all the resident developments that are going on up there and all of the new developments. 216 New Boston Street, that's under construction right now, and it's a spec building, but all of a sudden there's a lot of interest for that building to be occupied upon completion. So there's a lot of work going on right now trying to coordinate what the actual business will be, but there's a lot of interest for a building that was started last fall under spec conditions. So there's signs the economy is starting to turn, and it's not just focused on multifamily, and that's a good thing. We were just going down one path, multifamily, and there really didn't seem to be that much new commercial development. But, here's a developer, CC&F, that, stepped forward. They sensed the economy possibly changing, and I think they may have timed it right. That's at least what they believe is going on, so.
yeah.
One question, Casey, and John, before we go any further. Based on the map that I saw up there, why are we actually looking at this area? Is it because of the bridge coming? Is it because of unoccupied buildings? Is it because what I don't see is a lot of land developed? It looks like there's building on almost everywhere. So why are we looking at this New Boston Street?
Yeah, I think part of it was definitely because of the bridge opening and, economic development activity that was already happening there. The 316 New Boston Fairfield project, the 216 New Boston CCNF project. And there's not a lot of open land. We wouldn't be looking at brand new development. We'd be looking at, replacement of existing buildings potentially. There's a lot of buildings in the area that are maybe towards the end of their life or the end of their first life, that might be looking to turn over. That's sort of the indication we were looking at. Yeah, a lot of different property owners too. In this area, you have a lot of owner-occupied buildings. So as those owners are getting older and maybe don't have someone to pass their business on to, they might be looking to.
Are there a lot of buildings up there, like you mentioned, downsizing or making smaller? Are there a lot of buildings there that are too big now for what's actually in there? And
Yeah, there's subdivision of existing facilities. Bill Cummings is a major property owner within this industrial park, as he is throughout Woburn. And, his specialty is leasing to to small businesses that are just starting out, starting to grow. And as they grow, those businesses need more square footage. So Mr. Cummings, as a major property owner, commercial developer, has his hands on the pulse of what's going on out there. He's always able to, expand as much as possible within the existing footprint, any growing business that he may be leasing to. So that's one of the findings
Yeah.
of this study, of how many mixed uses are going on within the buildings. And, what we try to do in Casey's, one of Casey's major tasks for the city as the economic development manager is to help companies when they are trying to expand, to try to let them expand in Woburn. We're trying to keep as many commercial enterprises in the city as we can. So Casey's always working with companies to try to make sure that whatever their needs are as a growing company, that she's doing everything to facilitate locating and keeping them in Woburn. Casey, you may want to bring up the subject of Indigo into this discussion.
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of the thing is too, we do have so many small lots that aren't necessarily, you can't really do something on their own, but we'll get into the recommendations, but part of it is, can we build something into our zoning to promote, lot consolidation to then get like a more substantial building or something that would be more attractive towards some of the tenants we're trying to get at. And then just the other thing that kept coming up and up over and over again with people was that they want more places to eat and drink. Like they can go to Joseph's and Subway and Peeny's and that's it. So a little bit of demand for some commercial activity up there was really felt. So now we'll jump into the scenarios a little bit. And like John said, these are not set in stone or these aren't hard and fast recommendations. These are just ideas for us to consider, what could we support out there? What is the appetite of the planning board and city council for pursuing some of these zoning changes? So our consultants have put together 3 scenarios to just get us thinking about what might be possible out here. And then, we'll go from there, refining them or picking and choosing from each one or, coming up with our own. But this is really just more of like a brainstorming activity, which is what we asked them to do.
Casey, can you go through these color codes here? a
Yeah,
little bit?
I know it's hard to see. So the lighter purple is warehouses. You can't even see my mouse. It's not that.
This would be your lighter purple.
Yeah, that's warehouse. The
Colorblind, so I just.
Yeah, it's actually, this room is never great for a presentation. The reds are hotel, general office building. The blue is open space, municipal open space. The tan up the top is the residential multifamily, and then some of the other purples are all industrial uses. So building for manufacturing, developable land, open space. I'm sorry, what did I say? Open space. Office building. You have it in your email, but we're happy to provide any hard copies as well if you wanted to really dive into it.
Casey, can you just point out the top, you called it the beige location?
Yeah, you can't see my mouse, which is frustrating, but the northernmost parcel there is the 316 New Boston Street. That's the 425 units built by Fairfields.
Have board members
Fishing out
been
now.
up there? Because it's completed now. It's actually occupied.
The first building.
We're, as a city, we're trying to work out the final agreement having to do with the right-of-way access to it, but that wrinkle should be ironed out, hopefully soon.
So in scenario 1, this is kind of the most minor changes that they're recommending. At a minimum, they're recommending that we update and add some uses and definitions to our use table. They recommend updating our advanced manufacturing definitions, biotech manufacturing, R&D, lab research, and biomedical use. And that's just to be sure that we're being crystal clear about the type of businesses we're attracting. Add new definitions like co-working space, maker space, warehouse and distribution, flex space, microbreweries and brew pubs, data center, and data processing facilities. They're also suggesting that we simplify development rules by increasing the special permit threshold from 15,000 square feet to at least 50,000 square feet, allowed shared parking, and replace FAR, floor area ratio, with a minimum building coverage requirement instead. They're also suggesting that we improve site design and sustainability with wider landscape buffers, promoting less but higher quality open spaces and green infrastructure solutions, and update the parking ratios and look at the reduced height buffer from residential areas. So just to get an idea, this is the kind of thing that we're starting to think about. In scenario 2, they go a little bit further with their recommendations. They're kind of recommending adding a second planned unit development in the middle, what we're calling mixed-use industrial, which would have much more flexible uses. That's the blue in the middle. And then leave the purple on either end as industrial. And then within that blue area, we could allow higher intense uses like BSL-3 labs to attract advanced research and strengthen the innovation economy. And we could look at, encouraging development through DIFs and TIFs and other mechanisms that the city could use. And then in the light purple area, the existing industrial area, they're recommending all of the changes from zone scenario 1, but also removing FAR, requiring minimum 60% building coverage, reducing that open space requirement to 15% instead of 30, potentially reducing setbacks and allow for greater building heights. And then down in the red, they're recommending that we formalize that area down there as a commercial use, so it blends in kind of with the rest of Mishawam Road. And just to give you an idea, they did some modeling for us about what different heights and different FARs could look like, different parking requirements. So this is just, for illustrative purposes, but this would just give you an idea of maybe what something could look like out there if we were to, implement some of their recommended changes.
Casey, I just want to point out, and this particular illustration did gain quite a bit of attention from city council members, and I'd like to emphasize, that is School Street behind those buildings. That's Industrial Parkway. In all likelihood, if this particular idea was to gain a foothold as a prospective development potential for this industrial park, these high-rise buildings would probably most likely end up much more into the interior.
Yeah, you'd probably see them in the blue
we don't
section.
want to end up scaring, residential neighborhoods that directly abut the industrial park.
Right.
We don't want to encourage, that type of height, right behind, or in front of, depending on what you're looking at, all these residential neighborhoods along School Street.
Right. This was just a example that they chose to show what like an increased green buffer could look like, requiring parking behind versus parking in front, some different types of tiering. So just really a way to get thinking about it more than anything. And then scenario 3 is this is where we really challenged them, what could a mixed use area look like out on New Boston Street, really accomplish that live, work, play. So we have all the proposed changes, from scenario 1 and scenario 2. So we have the innovation district in blue in the middle. We have the lighter purple up towards the north, which is the industrial uses. But as we move south towards Mishawam, we would have some mixed use and housing component added in there. So they're, suggesting we could add a mixed-use residential district with high-density housing and ground floor commercial or light industrial uses. Just formalize that commercial area again and kind of have a gradual intensity of uses as you get towards the middle, and then kind of, gradually changes as you move towards the housing at the north and the south. So really just an exercise in seeing what could be possible out there. And then again, we have an illustration of what kind of this mixed use area could look like. Again, not the area that we would do it in or the height or anything like that, but just an idea of what something like a mixed use area could look like on New Boston Street.
Yeah, and Casey, I just want to point out too, this particular scenario was requested of the consultants, just to really think outside the box, because the previous 2 scenarios, they're not really thinking outside the box. They're just doing some modifications to zoning to accommodate, what may be coming towards us with this new economy. An economy that we really don't know what the actual uses are. Trying to figure out what the economy is going to do 2, 3, 5 years from now, the way it's changing so fast and the job structure is changing so fast, we really don't know. So the whole idea of this study for this particular industrial park is to try to figure out a way for us to be nimble and be quick when the economy is providing for us these, what I'll say, possible great economic development opportunities for the city of Woburn. We want to be ready for those and not have to struggle for a year or two trying to develop an overlay district. So if we can be as creative as possible going forward with the planning for this area, again, working as a planning board, working, the city council ultimately has the rezoning authority. We're just the recommending body, but working together, we should be able to come up with, a much better potential scenario for that area going forward. And one thing for sure, most of the development that is up in the industrial park, a lot of it is first generation that replaced piggeries, old gravel pits, old dump sites, and it's come a long way over the last 60 years. The Woburn Woburn Redevelopment Authority was first given the charge to combine all of the parcels up there, create the parcels, create the layout, plan for all the infrastructure that does exist up there. And that was all done in the late 50s, early 60s, implemented in the late 60s. And, Woburn was one of the first communities to think in that manner, taking advantage of 128 in 93. Trouble with being first, sometimes maybe you're ahead of the curve more than you maybe should have been. So we got first generation of industrial development movement from the inner core communities out to Woburn. Had we waited a little longer, maybe the timing was different. And I'll give you an example, Burlington. The development of Burlington, the economic development of Burlington, probably occurred 10 to 15 years later, for the most part, than Woburn. And by the time they started thinking in that mode, they had the Burlington Mall, which catapulted into the first executive park, which is the first office park along 128. When Spalding and Slide built the executive park that abuts the Burlington Mall, they thought, the development community thought they were crazy to think that offices were going to come out to this area, this 128 belt at the time. Everything was in Boston. But look, over the years, how successful that executive park was. And then they were able to attract the Leahy Clinic and multiple first-class office development in Burlington. And that was a result of timing more than anything else. Woburn could have been there, but we were ahead of the curve. And we were able to get economic development, but it was first-generation development that came to Woburn. Now, when you look at Woburn, you have commuter rail. And what community would not want to have what we have? And we have the perfect location when you think about real estate, the crossroads of 128 and 93. I said in front of the council, and I've been involved with this since '85, the city of Woburn as the planning director. I really believe Woburn is still just at the genesis of its development potential, believe it or not. Because right now what we're doing is planning for the next generation. And I think we have a real exciting future ahead of us in developing that and planning for it.
So briefly, we asked them to do a high-level look at our infrastructure. Obviously, the new bridge is opening, late spring, early summer this year, and that will just really unleash a lot of potential visitors, and it'll just really untap the area and unlock it. Right now, it's really been landlocked. But sidewalks in the area are inconsistent and in poor condition. There's no dedicated bike facilities. And again, even with the vehicle bridge opening up, Anderson RTC is still quite a walk away. So that's why we're pursuing this initiative to get some initial design of the pedestrian bridge done.
Look at the bridge load.
I know.
I remember going over that. It's like a roller coaster.
You know, one thing we don't have an issue with in that area is the road is well oversized, so we have room for sidewalks, bike lanes. You know, there's room there. We don't have a constriction there. Water and sewer have no major capacity issues right now, and natural gas and electricity do have some shortfalls in the area. We have run into issues with new developments having issues connecting to power. And then we have a big issue with stormwater management. You know, the systems up there are pretty limited, and so when there is some flooding, when we have high intensity storms, so that's something we need to be really cognizant of as we move forward. Just, you know, there's very briefly room for improvement in terms of multimodal action, or multimodal connections, I'm sorry, add new crossings to accommodate pedestrian and bikes, room for some timed signaled intersections in the area, you know, some crossing, there's room for additional signage, some pedestrian improvements, you know, in terms of curb cuts. There's lack of mature street trees that contribute, like people can really just get going down New Boston streets. There's some short-term fixes that we could put in, as well as some longer-term ones. Just to get an idea of what, you know, a cross-section of New Boston Street could look like, they offer two concepts, you know, with bike lanes, shared paths, you know, a wider or a narrower driveway. So just to give you an idea of the space that we are working with is quite wide, and so there's a lot of room to do something creative that can accommodate a lot of different folks out there.
One characteristic, Casey, about New Boston Street, I'm sure everybody that travels up there, you know, it's the epitome of first-generation industrial roadway. You know, let's just make this thing big and wide so it can handle any type of truck traffic. It's really the way it was designed. There's no aesthetic, you know, beauty involved with it at all. It's just a big, wide paved road.
Yeah, it's like a 50-foot wide,
Yeah.
50-foot wide right away.
Basically not striped. It doesn't have lane configurations, turning lanes, or anything like that. So it's a real free-for-all up there. You know, this depiction here of what it could look like, you know, yeah, it all takes money and whatnot, but, you know, those lanes up there for travel don't have to be as wide as they are. You know, it's 50 feet of pavement, and there's no rhyme to reason, you know, relative to bringing into that roadway system, you know, safe, modern designs that really help with vehicles and pedestrians being much safer as they travel down the road. Right now, it's kind of like a Wild West rodeo type of scene.
Yeah, there's a lot of room to work with and
You know, you can
accommodate
pass-
all users.
Yeah, you can pass on the left, the right,
Yeah.
do whatever you want up there right now. So it needs help. Hopefully, you know, as we go forward, we'll be able to plan for and implement changes to this right of way. You know, just bring it into a modern era of travel.
And then they just referenced a few case studies of industrial parks that have adopted a more complete streets platform. So they show Maryland, Hartwell Ave in Lexington, and then Cypher Street in Boston. So a few examples locally that have been able to accomplish something like shown in the previous scenario. Just briefly, they, you know, talked about some resilient development guide techniques that we could implement. You know, redevelopment sites should reference wetland buffer requirements and include future flood protection to ensure resilient growth. They want us to consider a no-build zone and a transition zone based on the floodplain, wetland, and water features to protect the sensitive area and manage that flood risk. And consider a special flood elevation zone for parcels adjacent to floodplains to provide an added layer of resilience. This is really high level, but just ideas to get us thinking about how we can make that area more resilient to the flood issue we talked about. Just a little bit more detail, you know, they're proposing, you know, the 0 to 50 foot buffer would be a no disturb area, and then that 50 to 150 foot buffer would be the transition area, which would have more stringent guidelines. So that is the conclusion of the slide. I guess just in closing, you know, as a city we have economic development, we have three main tools. We can offer someone a tax incentive, but that's a really powerful tool that should be used in like limited cases. We can, market ourselves as the best place to do business, but if our zoning and our regulations don't match up with what we're marketing, that's not really a good fit. And then our third and most powerful tools are zoning. That's what the city has completely within our control, and that's a really powerful tool for attracting the type of businesses that we want. So that's really why we started this project and asked the consultants to come up with some zoning recommendations. None of this is fine-tuned, ready for zoning amendment level. These are just to get us thinking, but I guess that would be our next step. Get feedback from you, get feedback from the city council, and then, we'll all get to work refining the actual zoning amendments that we want to bring forward. So, wasn't too bad.
Excellent.
Very nice presentation, Casey.
I have one question. Do we have flooding issues up there now?
Some areas.
Yeah, there is some infrastructure improvements that are needed relative to better stormwater management. The alderman is out in the audience there. He's well versed in those flooding issues. Halls Brook is up there that has, seasonal flooding issues. There is a brook or a stream that runs parallel with New Boston Street from the Wilmington line going down to Merrimack Street. The development that's taking place right now in 216 New Boston Street and potential campus that might result from that. The developer is actually thinking about going to the EPA, DEP with the proposal to reroute that particular brook. And I think the emphasis would be to make it look like a much more natural setting than a manufactured setting that it is right now. It looks just like a drainage trench, and it's actually a natural brook. But everything that's handling the natural flow of water has to be improved upon in that area. And, trying to deal with, the flooding conditions that happen seasonally and during severe storms, everything up there is flowing either into the Aberjona River Basin or they call it the Mishawam Lake. So, every project that's proposed has to handle the 100-year event on their own property. The question is that enough? Because everybody's worried about, much more impactful storms, and 100-year storm events are kind of a common occurrence. They don't happen just once every 100 years. They've been happening multiple times a year during certain years. But, trying to handle our stormwater capacity, is a project-by-project basis. Here, as we're planning the future of this area, we may end up planning for an enlarged caption area in retention. And that may be the scenario that's needed to be implemented to better control the flooding conditions. So there's a lot of emphasis that has to be addressed flooding-wise.
Build a nice little lake up there.
Yeah.
Pond
Oh,
or
yeah.
something, right? Have everything
Yeah.
drain into that.
Yeah.
Put a nice fountain in the middle and stuff.
I mean, that's what's,
Well,
yeah,
that's
that's
what's
what's,
on the
yeah.
side of it.
I mean, that's what's planned though in Four Corners on the west side of Cambridge roadway, ultimately, if we ever acquire the funding for it. Behind Dunkin' Donuts, the
Okay.
Shaker Glen area. There's a pond there right now, but, the plan is to retain as much water to reduce the flooding. Yeah.
So, I know that was the models on the school street side of the property showed what I counted to be 7-story buildings. And I know that was just a projection, a model. But if you go up to Pearl Street and you look at the Kimball Court area and you look at the impact on the backyards of all those houses up there on Pearl Street from that very large thing, I would not want to see them putting up overly tall buildings adjacent to the 1 and 2 family neighborhood that we have up there. That would really would fry me. That would be one of those things I would not want to see. I'd also want to make sure they do not give up any buffer zones, any buffer land. We need that space between the trees where those single and two-family houses are in this industrial thing. And the other thing you mentioned was data centers. And John, I know we talked about the power requirements of these data centers, but there's an enormous water requirement also with these things. And I know you're just saying generally what's going to be in the zone. I would really hate to see one of those data centers come here, because the potential for brownouts in the city is real until they really get us, they're trying to tell them they have to supply their own energy. So unless they're buying those refrigerator-sized nuclear energy plants from the Chinese, are about the size of a refrigerator, and they're hydrogen-based, I don't think we would approve them coming here. There's going to have to be a lot of infrastructure work done on bringing in energy.
Yeah, actually, I should have clarified. She was recommending we add a data center definition, but have it actually not be allowed right now until we have more conversation. And she suggested we could have different scales of data center, but that was just to make sure we're addressing the current.
It's just that the draw against the communities is so enormous that I'm on the electrical board for the state,
Yeah.
and I'm telling you, this is a discussion about brownouts.
Yeah, Lowell just passed a moratorium on data centers. They have a pretty large data center right in a residential area that uses massive amounts of diesel fuel generators to power.
Yeah.
And so they're having a big issue with.
Think of
that
the
up there.
smell.
Yeah, data centers nationwide are really getting shot down in multiple locations, because, data centers sounds like this great thing. They don't create all that many jobs. We do need them relative to our computer capacity, but they have to be located where you can actually put them. New England notoriously has high energy costs, so they're not a natural draw for this area economically. Data centers, they're just not. And the water usage, that's a big concern.
And it's not just the water usage, it's the output of a warm water
Yeah.
back into the system, and it upsets the whole temperature control of whatever it is that's living up there, because we know there's all kinds of critters. If you've walked around there's all things scurrying through the grass, and hard to believe in some of those areas something could live, but, there's a lot of living things up there, and that warming of the water, it's just one of those things that doesn't make my heart feel very good about seeing them come.
Now, they're not really welcomed when you start focusing in on their impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure they'll find appropriate homes, but I really don't think, Woburn will be, looking to attract them. Yeah.
I think, hearing the presentation tonight and hearing the recommendation from the director, the thoughts are all over the place. I'm quite familiar, and I live up in that area generally. I don't feel comfortable weighing in on anything whatsoever this evening for presentation. And I do strongly support the idea and concept of a subcommittee ad hoc. Next agenda item is going to be the same scenario, the downtown development. So I'd like to table that for now, if the board feels comfortable with it, take up both items, possibly set up separate subcommittees for both areas. And if we feel we're ready to do that, great. If we want to take our time, that's also acceptable. I think there's a couple open issues that came to mind. We know the bridge is coming online. The T station access is going to be a major component of it, and everything that everyone discussed tonight is very valid and needs to be addressed. A little bit more in-depth thought and understanding what's being discussed and proposed in this before we present to anyone beyond our body. I think it'd be wise if we step back from this and did our own legwork.
Yes.
Welcome feedback from
Question.
the board. Yes, go ahead.
Would the planners be able to do any sort of viewpoint study for us relative to David's comment on the height? I think it's hard to just say 50 feet is too
Right.
tall or 70 feet is too tall to actually know what it looks like from some of those people's houses.
Yeah, so the scope of this existing project has ended. We're just waiting for the final report to come, which will be much more detailed. You know, we'll have the definitions of the things we mentioned. It'll really dive into that next level. So we'll have that by the end of the month. But that's something we would have like a future project to work on. You know, as we start fine tuning the definitions, that's stuff we'd want them to look at.
I just have to emphasize truly, as strongly as I can, that was an illustration.
Yeah, yeah.
No one is contemplating that. Lou, you heard that, right? No, yeah. And as I said earlier, if anything was to happen within the industrial park, and it would all have to be agreed upon, you know?
Right.
Any zoning changes, you know, have to pass muster with this planning board, with the city council, signed into law by the mayor. So these are just illustrative, and if height allowances such as that were to occur, and again, it would all have to be agreed to, in all likelihood, it would be into the interior of the industrial park, not directly abutting residential neighborhoods. So that's just an illustration. You know, in retrospect, we should have been more sensitive to not have that illustration at that location, but we weren't thinking at the time. But anyway, we're not
No.
planning to overrun the city with big, high buildings next to residential neighborhoods, so that's
No, and
not-
I agree with you,
that's
Jim.
not
Like, this
on
was
the
just to
agenda.
get our ideas flowing. We're going to get the more detailed report by the end of the month that will provide the clarity in those definitions, you know, the recommended FAR changes. It'll just go to that next level that this presentation didn't, and then I think that'll be a good starting off point to figure out what we want to do next.
Our subcommittee type meeting is much more fluid discussion than it is in a formal setting in the chambers.
Agreed.
You mean like Zork? Like Zork?
Yeah, you know, Mr. Chairman, and I want to go back to what I said earlier. It's really an opportunity for us. We're planners, you know, so it's an opportunity to have the time and take the time to delve into the findings of this study and see if we like any of the scenarios that have been presented. We may come up with our own. It might be a hybrid of all three. But, you know, it's a real opportunity for us to actually plan for a focused area of the city that's truly important and really does need some help in trying to plan for a better future for that area. So
Yeah, and
it's a
giving
good
the,
chance
it's
for
giving the
us.
city the power and the control over what we want versus thinking about. And this is a new way for us to be thinking, so it's not. Like, I haven't been here that long, but I don't think we've done this type of like deep dive before. So it's a new way for all of us to be thinking about this. But it's really a tool for us rather than, you know, just being
Yeah.
thrown things,
Right.
things thrown at us.
And you know, just to throw a little bit of a wet little dish rag on this, you know, as much planning as you may put into an area in trying to figure out what would be the best scenario for the future, a lot of times the economy just doesn't come around to that. You know, it goes in a different direction. So, you know, it's like forecasting the weather. You really want to try to be able to forecast it as accurately as possible, but you know, it changes direction on you, and you know, all of a sudden you don't have the storms coming in that you think you will. You know, years ago, I always liked reading older planning studies, and one of the studies that I read years ago was how houses were going to become much smaller, and this was a projection in the early 70s that, you know, the population was going to, you know, or I should say family numbers would shrink, which they did. But houses would shrink in correspondence with that. And if anything, that's not what happened. I mean, people just love building big houses with empty space. and having trouble furnishing the houses that they build. And, I found out the hard way, the bigger the house, the more maintenance costs, the more taxes, just all around. Heating costs. So the wise thing is to, build the house size and, make sure it's energy efficient as possible. But, there's no need to be building a house bigger than what you need. There's nothing worse than having empty rooms.
I don't think so. No, just,
John,
what's that?
any more on behalf of John?
I don't think so. Or we're going to talk about,
Well, I asked Casey if she'd stay around for,
Yeah.
yeah, just, yeah.
Any more members have any questions about that? We can take possible subcommittee action at the end.
Yeah, I just wanted Casey to stay around for the other remaining issues on this agenda.
Update on the downtown opportunity analysis study at Main Street Improvement.
Okay. As you can see in the director's report, we were supposed to have a meeting this morning with our consultants for this study. Unfortunately, they couldn't make the schedule for this morning. But this study continues to go forward, and as I pointed out in the director's report, we intentionally lagged this study a month or two behind the North Woburn study so that we could coordinate both at the same time, but knowing that we really wanted to complete one before we, or getting heavily involved with the other. This particular study is centered on the immediate downtown area in the immediate surrounding neighborhoods, mixed-use areas of downtown. We've been involved with the consulting group, putting forward the study, finding, discovering the information within the study area, just as the North Woburn study consultants have been doing for the last year. So our consultants are gathering all the data, the information, figuring out what possible zoning changes in consultation with Casey, myself, other city staff, and hopefully at the draft stage of this study, have a number of proposals that will give us a clearer vision for the downtown area. Any particular downtown, such as Woburn's downtown, always has to be looked at and refined and, best figured out of how we can continue improving it, how we can continue attracting businesses, marketing the downtown area for businesses, trying to figure out what the best uses are allowed or should be allowed in the downtown area. Everybody, I think, agrees that downtowns need foot traffic. The more foot traffic, the more viable the economic scenario is for a downtown area. One of the more important features of this study that we've asked the consultants to delve into is, how can we include in the downtown area additional residential development, again, that would support the downtown economic environment. But do we also need to look at a higher density of residential development in the surrounding neighborhood areas of downtown? And putting together a scenario that we can be able to vision of, a more active, more vital, more stable downtown for economic development activity and for improving the overall downtown for all of the residents of the city. It's come a long way over the last 40 years, a very long way. What we want to do, again, with this study is to continue trying to determine a more improved future as we go forward. Both aesthetically and for a more stable business environment and for an environment that does introduce quality housing and quality additional neighborhood scenarios for the downtown area.
and I think we have a public meeting with our consulting team to present their initial draft recommendations scheduled for Wednesday, April 8th at 6:30. Still confirming a location, but likely this room here if the library is not available. So that'll be a redevelopment authority meeting that we're going to be inviting planning board and city council members to participate in.
Just an update on what is going on downtown Federal Street, the 40R district, 30 some odd units of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. That will be coming forward finally, probably latter part of this spring as an application that would involve the planning board and the city council, as you know, the city council being the permit granting authority. Casey and I have been working with the consultant to update the 40R district that, you know, ultimately needs the state approval for. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think we're making good progress on it. We don't have our approved housing production plan yet, so John and I have to work on kind of a supplemental form as part of the application, and then we're working on getting a few engineering certificates or certifications done. So probably, yeah, end of spring, early summer.
Is this the area behind, I'm sorry. Whatever I want, whenever, I apologize, sir. It will never happen again. Yeah? Is this the same thing that came before us a couple of years ago, a few years ago? Is this behind the post office?
Post
Yes.
office, yeah.
Yeah, the previous administration tried to refine it, and, you know, they did a really good job of that, but now it has been updated. And we're working with the state, working with the developer's attorney, and things are finally on track. The consultant that's reviewing and amending the 40R district, bringing it up to the requirements of today, he's finalizing that action that needs to take place. Soon as he's done with that, and we're thinking another couple of weeks to a month, then they'll be ready to submit.
Whatever happened, my memory, what happened with the first time it came through?
It just wasn't agreed upon relative to the composition of the bedrooms.
Did we send it to the council with a
I don't think it ever got that far. I don't think we had.
It came before us.
Yeah, we had the initial, this was also before me or right when I started, but John, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had the initial public hearing that was a mayor's public hearing because of 40R, the city has to present or propose the zoning districts. The mayor had an initial public hearing to introduce the subject, but the zoning was never proposed, so it never got to the level of city council or planning board. But you might have been, the public hearing might have actually been through the planning board.
It definitely.
Yeah, so that might have been the initial.
Yeah. So, in any event, there were 3-bedroom aspects of that development that the parking ratios didn't really work
That was
out.
a big problem.
Yeah. So the state, over this past year, you know, is going to allow for 1 and 2 bedrooms, and they're waiving the 3 and 4 bedroom requirement for this project. So that was the big stumbling block that never brought it forward.
Yeah, so I think the planning board must have held the initial public hearing to introduce it, but it never moved into the zoning.
So the parking, the parking numbers match the number of bedrooms for it. So it fits on the site entirely. There's no spillover of parking requirements onto public parking areas. So that's that one project. There's a couple of smaller multifamily projects that were approved last year that haven't gone anywhere yet. They haven't commenced construction, one being the Dome, the so-called Dome, and the other one off of Walnut Street. Both projects, I think, really been stalled because of the cost of construction more than anything else. Who knows, that might be more palatable to start construction in maybe this year.
A couple of new cool businesses moving into town too. We have a indoor kids playground type space that's moving into the former Music Performance Center, 405 Main Street. So they're doing their build out right now. They hope to open June, sometime this summer. And then a pottery studio is opening where the Central Grill was, next to Sam's Kitchen. So they'll offer pottery classes and then have like a retail component where you can buy things too. So.
Don't forget the Boulder Road.
Of course, the Boldrome is under construction. They're opening it they hope to open in the fall. They're really working on things, putting in a new arcade, full restaurant, bar, keeping some candlepin, putting in new lanes. So it's really going to be like an immersive, fun, full-blown bowling alley experience when they open back up.
And the parking lot up there, the entrance for the new Bolodrome, is that primarily gonna be on the backside of the parking lot, or is it gonna be Montville Ave, as a secondary, the way they have it now?
Yeah, so it'll be the same layout they had before. So primary entrance through Walnut Street, and then they'll have the Montville entrance as well.
Front on Main Street, backed on the parking lot side, what if the roles were reversed? And the main entrance was on the parking level, okay, and the secondary was down below, the minor shops. You have all your parking that you need, gets it off Main Street.
Mhm. I don't know if they've looked at like that specifically. They're definitely looking at secondary signage related to, the backs of storefronts, especially along Walnut Hill. I think there's some room to improve secondary signage requirements. And at the same time, we have our parking management plan also underway. So everything's kind of coming together in separate pieces, but will ultimately fit together nicely. But I don't know if they've explored your topic specifically, but happy to bring it up to them.
Mr. Chairman? On that point, which is a really important point, when you do walk in Walnut Street parking lot and you look at the backs of the buildings that front along Main Street, a lot of the businesses have done a great job of creating that secondary access to Walnut Street. It's not just Citizens Bank, but the new bank down there. Brickyard has the elevator, that's a city-owned elevator, and they have the stairway there. But there's a couple of other businesses that have done a really good job of accessing Walnut Street parking lot. The parking study that's going on right now in the redevelopment authority, which the downtown is their jurisdiction, they're very active right now. Casey and I administer all the workload that's going on with them. But what we focused in on at our last meeting is that Walnut Street parking lot, more than any other parking lot in the downtown area, really deserves a lot of focus and attention to get ready for the Bolodrome activity, which will, increase the parking demands of that parking lot, probably double what it is right now. Right now, that parking lot, in any given time, has a 30% capacity. It's probably going to be erased with the opening of the Bolodrome. And I think there's more activity going on downtown that require that parking lot and the spaces that are provided there. So we're going to focus, as the redevelopment authority, I'm a staff member, Casey's a staff member, and there's a full board now assigned and very active in trying to better manage the downtown area. But we're going to focus on that parking lot and try to better manage all the parking spaces. So, and we do have a fresh study in that regard. So,
My next question before we jump into possibly setting up a subcommittee is, of the two proposals that are out there, the downtown opportunity and the new Boston, which is gonna be the higher priority for the city, and which is more likely to need to come online first? And my thoughts are with this bridge, after the station and after the bridge opens, the station, if you do a walkway there, that's gonna be a couple of years in the taking. So what is the urgency of one or the other?
can I suggest some? Yeah.
Convening subcommittees, if we try and do two at the same time, and just wanna set a expectation that's achievable.
Yeah, so what I'd like to suggest, Mr. Chairman, and to the board, the Woburn Redevelopment Authority, they're probably going to be the body that's focused in on doing a lot of the initial workload after the study is done. in figuring out. So they'll be the body, that's what we're envisioning anyway. They'll be the body that's focused in on working on the zoning ordinances, figuring out what uses to allow. And they'll be reporting to the planning board, they'll be reporting to the city council and the mayor with their findings. So that's almost their jurisdictional area, so that this planning board can focus in on the industrial park solely. That's what I would propose.
Yeah, and I think the New Boston Street area, I think, could get more complex just with the different elements out there. And I think downtown has the possibility of getting complex too, but there's a lot of like simpler, low-hanging fruit that we'll be able to handle kind of quicker. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, personally, I think it's a little too early to set up an ad hoc committee. I'd rather wait for the third report. Just my opinion. And also, I think we should do a study to study the studies. Make sure all the studies are proper.
We have a bookshelf full of studies upstairs if you want to come look. I know. We're determined not to let this one just sit on a shelf. We want to implement.
Be a study to see if the study should be studied. But that's, on the ad hoc, that's,
Whatsoever, I think it's best to, table this, have some offline discussions amongst ourselves and see, who may be interested if we move forward with a subcommittee and when we implement it. After the final presentation is absolutely, I think, the wisest choice, but we just want to make sure we're staying up to speed with what the administration everyone wants.
Plus, we do have time because we don't have the study completed yet. So they'll be providing the draft copy of this study in the not-too-distant future. That ultimately, we'll have time to tweak it, council will have time to tweak it, and, that'll be the final draft. I would suspect it, maybe in the summer, we'll get our hands on a final draft of this so that we can start working on the findings once we do have the hard copy in front of us, the digital copy in front of us.
Yeah, and then concurrently, we're working on securing additional funding so that we can keep, some people moving along to help us with our studying of the studies.
Yeah, exactly. These things never end if they're funded.
Analyzing the studies.
Yeah, so, since this was so much stuff in a short period of time, maybe we should wait till next meeting and see who's interested in joining the subcommittee, because I've been on too many of these things in my lifetime where they say, oh, let's have the subcommittee, and you raise your hand and you say, good idea, and then you realize what you bit into. But a month from now, we might have a better sense of our time coming up for the summer and what have you, and the interest.
That said, it sounds like we want to table it as a group for at least another meeting. And we can bring it up again there if you want to move forward.
Make a motion, we table it till the next meeting, and then we decide what we're going to do from that.
Motion made by David to table to the next meeting.
Yes.
I'll second it. What is the motion for? Because we don't have a, okay.
And we can decide,
I don't think we need a motion for that, but I'll second it if the chairman thinks we need more, I'll go second.
Dave, we have a second, we'll finish it off. All those in favor? Okay, opposed? 0. And, Mr. Director, you got a comment?
Yes, I just want to make sure that we're going to continue, and say as quickly as possible. I don't want to keep us here all night, but in regard to the Main Street Improvement Project, I just wanted to say that, and Casey, you can help me with this too, the Main Street Improvement Project just recently received an over-the-shoulder review of the 25% design, and the city proposed alternate plan 1 versus alternate plan 2, and the state appears to have granted approval for the alternate plan 1, which is the most preferred plan that the city would like to move forward with relative to fully submitting and having approval of the 25% design. Now, before that happens, there is a planned meeting, go before the city council to present these findings. So the planning board will be invited to that meeting, and it'll take place, I would imagine, in the council chambers. So the mayor will be in attendance, Casey will be in attendance, the city engineer. It'll be along with all the consultants, but it'll be a full review of where we are with the downtown improvement project as of the day it happens. So that's coming up, another,
I think we talked about late May or early June, maybe.
so the next big event is the presentation by the consultants and city staff to the city council with planning board and other public officials and the public at large invited to attend. Okay, so that's the update I wanted to give the board on that. And we'll give you plenty of notice in advance of that meeting when it's scheduled. And then, one last thing, you want me to continue? Okay, the housing production plan, the long-awaited housing production plan is, because of weather conditions and scheduling conflicts and whatnot, we finally have agreed to a March 23rd meeting with the city council's liaison committee, and that's proposed as a committee of the whole of the council. And right now, it's anticipated that the meeting will take place March 23rd, 6 p.m. in the city council chambers.
I believe so, yeah. I think that's what
Subject to change. So it's all tentative, but we'll make sure you get a proper invite to that meeting if you'd like to attend as members of the planning board. And then just in closing, once the council is through with their review of the housing production plan update, it'll come back to the planning board for a final review. And then it goes off to the state for their final review and approval, or amendment and approval. And that concludes our presentation for this evening.
Next up, meeting minutes from the February 10th, 2026 for approval.
If everyone has had a chance to look at it, I would go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Claudia, second by Dave. All those in favor, that means abstain. 5 in favor, and 1 abstaining, and 1. Nothing else?
Actually, other business? Just briefly, I wanted to put on the public record that I will be retiring from the planning board at the expiration of my current term, which is on May 31st. And I just wanted to say it has been my honor and privilege to serve the citizens of the city of Woburn for almost 29 years. And it is a special privilege to be able to do that with such a great group of colleagues, both past and present. So thank you. And with that, I would make a motion to adjourn at 8:18.
Mr. Chairman, can I make an exception to that motion?
Discussion.
Yeah, for discussion purposes. And we do have a couple of meetings before you formally retire from the planning board. But I just reflect back, just briefly, that I think we were kids back in those days.
Much younger. Yeah, much younger.
It's been a long and winding road.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's always been a pleasure having you on the planning board for both your intelligence and your patience with all of us, including myself, especially. And I had some really great times over the years. And at one point, for a couple of years, I was on the planning board, serving as a member of the planning board.
That's right, sitting next to me.
Yeah, yeah, and in being self-reflective, I really wish I never did have that appointment. I like working for planning boards much better than being on a planning board. I found out the hard way, but it's all fun and games.
Yeah, we would have preferred you.
Yeah,
on it.
I'm sure. I'm sure it wasn't one of my happier times.
It was 11 o'clock, 11:30. John was beating somebody down.
You know, in the early days, in '85 through '90, we were here till midnight all the time,
All the
twice a month. I mean, we used to have 30 items on the agenda. You know, and just real quick, when I left here in '01 and ended up in Hudson, New Hampshire after a brief stint in Georgetown in Tewksbury, and we had our first meeting, I think the second night I was there, and I had a bunch of things on the agenda, and they're like, are you crazy? We don't deal with anything more than 6 items on our agenda in any one meeting. I said, 6? I mean, we're used to dealing with 30 items.
Jim, you ought to note that.
Yeah. So we had long nights and drawn-out affairs. And then when I went to Georgetown some years ago, 8, 9 years ago, they would get upset if there was more than 3 items on the agenda. So, and then you come back here, and it's still so busy, Casey. And we're very lucky right now. We finally have a fully staffed department. It's been a long time, and we're just getting a lot of work done now. Matt's been a great addition, and he's coming along so quickly. And we have Gabriella as our energy advocate, doing a tremendous amount of work for the city relative to enhancing our energy efficiency goals as a community. So it's we got a grant writer bringing in so much money, we don't know what to do with it all. No, but
Another study.
yeah, yeah, another study. Get Kevin on that. But
Clerical.
Oh, yes.
I would amend my prior motion to adjourn at 8:22.
I'll second.
Second.
Dave.
All those in favor?
Celtics.
6, 7, nothing.
And the next meeting is when?
the next meeting is the second Tuesday in
So
the
we're-
month of April.
So we are just going to all
Time
look
is flying.
at our